Your brain is managing two competing attention systems right now, one that wants to focus deeply on this video, and another that's scanning for competing stimuli in your environment. People with ADHD often recognize this tension, but when someone is also autistic, a combination many people call AuDHD, something more complex is happening. Their brain isn't just distractible or hyperfocused. It's both simultaneously, in ways that challenge everything we thought we knew about attention itself. For years, we've treated attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism as separate conditions with different attention profiles. ADHD meant scattered focus, difficulty sustaining attention, jumping between tasks, constantly seeking novelty. Autism meant intense focus, deep concentration on special interests, difficulty shifting attention away from preferred activities. These seemed like clean categories with clear distinctions. Recent research reveals something unexpected. A 2019 meta-analysis by Antschel and colleagues, published in Clinical Child and Family Psychology Review, found that between 37 and 85% of autistic children also meet criteria for ADHD, with the variation depending on diagnostic methods and sample characteristics. Similarly, Leitner's 2014 systematic review in research in autism spectrum disorders reported co-occurrence rates ranging from 30 to 61% across studies. That's not a small overlap. That's a fundamental challenge to how we understand both conditions. When researchers started studying these AuDHD individuals directly, rather than just examining autism and ADHD separately, they found something remarkable. The attention patterns in AuDHD aren't just a combination of autistic and ADHD traits. They're qualitatively different, creating what Michelle Mowery at the University of Florida described in her 2020 research as experiencing competing cognitive demands from two distinct neurological profiles operating simultaneously. The autistic brain often gravitates toward routine, predictability, and deep focus on specific interests. The ADHD brain frequently seeks novelty, stimulation, and variety. When both systems are active in the same person, the result isn't a blend. It's an internal conflict that plays out in attention patterns we're only beginning to understand. Most pop psychology still treats this as simple addition. Autism plus ADHD equals more symptoms. But the neuroscience tells a different story. While we're still learning how the brain networks involved in attention, the default mode network, the salience network, the central executive network, function in AuDHD. Emerging research suggests these interactions create unique patterns we're only beginning to map. This difference has profound implications for how we understand attention itself. To understand what's happening in AuDHD brains, we need to start with how attention actually works. Think of your brain's attention system like a sophisticated air traffic control tower, managing multiple runways. There's the central executive, your conscious, goal-directed attention that decides what deserves focus. There's the salience network, constantly scanning for important or novel information. And there's the default mode network, active when you're not focused on the outside world, handling internal thoughts and self-referential processing. In neurotypical brains, these networks coordinate smoothly. When you need to focus on a task, the central executive ramps up activity in relevant brain regions, while the default mode network quiets down. The salience network acts as a switch, determining when to shift attention based on what's most important. Nicolas Zink and his colleagues at UCLA published findings in 2021 in the Journal of Attention Disorders, showing that ADHD brains have what researchers call network coordination difficulties. The different attention networks don't work together as they should. Their functional magnetic resonance imaging study of 184 adults found that ADHD brains show altered connectivity patterns between attention networks, with the default mode network failing to quiet down when it should, creating what feels like constant mental chatter. Meanwhile, the salience network becomes hyperactive, treating almost everything as potentially important. Now layer autism on top of this. Katya Rubia's research at King's College London, published in Molecular Psychiatry in 2014, compared brain activation patterns during sustained attention tasks in boys with ADHD, boys with autism, and neurotypical controls. She found that autism and ADHD share some common attention problems. Both groups showed reduced activation in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and problems with default mode network suppression, but they also had crucial differences. The ADHD brains showed more severe dysfunction in the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for maintaining focus and filtering distractions. This correlated directly with their performance problems on sustained attention tasks. The autistic brains, however, showed enhanced cerebellar activation. Essentially, they were working harder to compensate for attention difficulties, often successfully. The intersection of these conditions reveals something unexpected. When both conditions are present, you get what researchers are calling distinct cognitive patterns. A 2020 study by Craig and colleagues in neuropsychology compared adults with ADHD to neurotypical controls during complex visual attention tasks and found that ADHD brains use fundamentally different strategies for processing hierarchical visual information, the kind of complex layered stimuli we encounter constantly in real environments. Think of it this way. Imagine your attention system as a sophisticated camera with multiple lenses. The autistic lens wants to zoom in extremely close on specific details, creating incredibly sharp focus on preferred subjects but struggling to adjust when the scene changes. The ADHD lens constantly adjusts zoom and focus, capturing lots of different information, but rarely holding still long enough for a clear shot. When both lenses are active simultaneously, the camera doesn't just switch between modes. It creates an entirely different kind of image, with some areas in hyper-sharp focus, while others blur and refocus rapidly. This shows up in brain imaging studies. Cortese and colleagues' 2021 research in biological psychiatry showed that ADHD adults have unusual connectivity between the auditory processing network, the ventral attention network, and the default mode network. Emerging data from AuDHD individuals suggests these connectivity patterns are even more complex, with some networks showing hyperconnectivity while others show reduced communication. The key insight is that attention in AuDHD isn't just more difficult, it's operating according to different rules. The competing demands of autistic deep focus and ADHD novelty-seeking create what researchers are calling cyclical attention patterns, periods of intense, almost compulsive focus, followed by crashes where attention becomes completely scattered. The picture gets more complicated when we examine real-world functioning. The research I've described comes primarily from laboratory studies using controlled attention tasks, detecting targets on computer screens, sustaining focus during boring vigilance tasks, responding to specific visual or auditory stimuli. These studies are invaluable for understanding brain mechanisms, but they don't capture the full complexity of attention in daily life. Consider the replication challenges. Many of the foundational studies on ADHD attention have sample sizes in the 20s or 30s, reasonable for expensive brain imaging research, but small enough that findings need careful interpretation. Rubia's study compared 20 boys in each group. These are solid studies, but we're still building the evidence base. More importantly, most research has focused on either autism or ADHD, not their combination. The few studies that directly examine AuDHD are even smaller and more preliminary. We're essentially trying to understand a newly recognized phenomenon with tools designed for studying its component parts. There's also the masking problem. Many AuDHD individuals, particularly women and girls, develop sophisticated strategies to hide their attention difficulties. They might appear to be listening in meetings while actually hyper-focusing on the pattern in someone's shirt. They might seem organized because they've created elaborate systems to compensate for executive function challenges. Traditional attention measures often miss these compensatory strategies. The diagnostic complexity adds another layer. Until recently, autism and ADHD were considered mutually exclusive diagnoses. The DSM-5 changed this in 2013, but many clinicians still aren't trained to recognize their co-occurrence. This means many AuDHD individuals receive incomplete or inaccurate diagnoses, making research on the true prevalence and characteristics of AuDHD difficult. We also don't fully understand how attention patterns change across development in AuDHD. Most research focuses on children or young adults, but attention systems continue developing into the mid-20s, and the interaction between autistic and ADHD attention patterns might shift over time. Some AuDHD adults report that their attention became more manageable as they learned to work with both systems, rather than fighting them. There's also the question of subtypes. ADHD has 3 presentations: predominantly inattentive, predominantly hyperactive impulsive, and combined. Autism has its own spectrum of presentations. The intersection creates multiple possible combinations, each potentially with different attention profiles. We're nowhere close to mapping this complexity. So what does this mean for understanding your own attention, whether you're AuDHD, have one of these conditions, or are simply trying to understand someone who does? If you recognize the internal conflict I've described, craving both routine and novelty, needing both deep focus and variety, you're not broken or contradictory. You're experiencing a legitimate neurological pattern that researchers are only beginning to understand. The tension between these competing attention systems isn't a character flaw, it's a feature of how your brain is wired. This has practical implications for attention management. Traditional ADHD strategies often emphasize external structure, breaking tasks into smaller pieces using timers and reminders. Traditional autism supports focus on accommodating sensory needs and honoring special interests, but ADHD brains need both, and sometimes these strategies conflict. The cyclical nature of ADHD attention suggests that energy management might be more important than time management. Instead of fighting against your attention patterns, you might need to learn to work with them. This could mean scheduling demanding tasks during your natural focus periods and planning for recovery time after intense concentration. The research on distinct cognitive mechanisms also suggests that ADHD individuals might excel in situations that require both systematic thinking and creative problem solving, combining autism's attention to detail with ADHD's ability to make novel connections. Understanding this can help with career choices, learning strategies, and self-advocacy. For relationships, recognizing that ADHD attention operates differently can reduce frustration and misunderstanding. When someone appears to be ignoring you but is actually hyper-focused on something else, or when they seem scattered but are actually processing multiple streams of information simultaneously. Understanding the underlying attention dynamics can foster patience and better communication strategies. The brain imaging research suggests that all ADHD individuals are often working much harder than it appears to maintain attention and focus. This invisible effort can lead to exhaustion and burnout that others don't recognize. Acknowledging this can help with self-compassion and with asking for appropriate accommodations. Your attention system isn't a single spotlight that either works or doesn't. It's a complex orchestra of brain networks that can be conducted in many different ways. In ADHD, you have two conductors, one preferring classical music's structured complexity, the other drawn to jazz's improvisational energy. The result isn't chaos, it's a unique performance that requires understanding both conductors' strength and needs. The research is showing us that this isn't a disorder to be fixed, but a different way of experiencing and processing the world that comes with both challenges and remarkable capabilities. As we better understand how these attention systems interact, we're not just learning about ADHD, we're discovering new truths about the beautiful complexity of human attention itself.